This episode of the Big Skip Energy Podcast is brought to you by Highland Mortgage, where your home journey starts and ends with confidence. Whether you're a first-time buyer looking to refinance or ready to move into your dream home, or simply have questions about the market and want a free consultation, Highland Mortgage is here to guide you every step of the way. With personalized mortgage solutions tailored to fit your unique needs, their team of experts make sure you're informed, supported, and empowered in every decision. And here's the best part: Highland Mortgage isn't just about numbers and paperwork, it's about making the process simple, stress free, and even exciting. If you're ready to take that next step, visit highlandmtg.com today and start your journey to home sweet home. Do you want to be successful? Do you want to grow your business? Do you want to dominate the day? Then you're gonna need Big Skip Energy. Mark, welcome to the Big Skip Energy Podcast. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Laura Witte, welcome back. You are becoming a friend of the show, as they say. So
Thank you.
that's right. Yep, you're going to be my Ed McMahon before long. That's a throwback. Let's see how many listeners get that reference.
Yes, I hope so.
But Mark, listen, really appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to this conversation. And if you would, just take a second, introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you're all about.
Yeah, so my name is Mark Jones. I am the CEO and team leader of Keller Williams in town Atlanta. We have about 200 agents right in the heart of the city in Metro Atlanta. And I've been in the business for 25 years. This is my 25th year in real estate. Licensed in 99, been a broker since 2002. And I've been in my current role since 2018. So this is my 7th year in the role.
Okay.
And I've been a broker owner, a broker, team leader. I've done lots of different roles, including, sales and development sales and all that.
Well, I love that because that's going to give you a variety of perspectives. And, the fact that you've been around since 1999, that's good. That means you have a.
Yeah, I like to say since the turn of the century.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to say that. But that's that's great, man. Looking forward to getting your take on some of these topics. Laura, just in case there's anybody that hasn't heard you on the show yet, take a second and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Laura Witte, one of the owners and a loan officer with Highland Mortgage, the Truth and Lending Group. I've been around since the turn of the century as well, in 98, 99. Seen a lot of markets and look forward to our conversation today.
And welcome back. And I'm really glad you said that, both of y'all have had exposure to a lot of markets. Let's talk about that a little bit. Because, per usual, there's a lot of false information, misinformation floating around out there. A lot of, just wrong perceptions about the market. So let's talk about that a little bit, if you will. Mark, let's start off with you. Talk to us about what you're seeing in the metro area. Because one thing about Atlanta, and please correct me, if I'm wrong, is that it is a lot of times indicative of how a lot of the hotter markets in the country are, just by nature of its demographic and location, et cetera. So talk to me a little bit about that. What's the real state of the market right now?
Yeah, so it's a bit of two different markets. There's the multiple offers that are still happening on well-priced properties that are in move-in ready shape, that are pristine and buyer ready, that could be insta-worthy, if you will. And then that's about 30% of the market.
Yeah.
And then there's close to 40% of the market that is expiring and not selling. We call them failed listings, right? The listings have not sold because they weren't priced appropriately, or they may have been priced appropriately, but there's not a buyer for that not ready for prime time house.
There you go. So what I'm hearing, though, is that it's still a very active market. There's not, even though we have a little bit of a lower level of inventory and sales, it's still very active. Things are still going. But the reason, the main reasons things aren't moving, it sounds like, frankly, it's less market driven and human driven. But which, of course, you could argue the market is completely human driven. But yeah, you see my point. Yeah. Laura, does that jive pretty well with what you're seeing on the financing side? Because you're out there, writing the pre-approvals for everybody. What do you see?
Absolutely. Yeah, Mark is spot on. It's really a tale of two markets. I like that. Very much so. And I saw something today. I was reading something and it was interesting. And Mark knows me, so he knows sort of where I come from. And we don't really like rate sell because people have reasons that they move. Like, what is the why for you
For
moving?
sure. Yeah. Well,
Kind
that's
of
what most
thing.
successful salespeople do.
Right. And the question is that I ask my, buyers and sellers is, what are you waiting for? Do you even know? Like in the market, like those who are waiting and the listings, there's some listings that are sitting and the market's, it's changing, you know, what are you waiting for? That's the thing. We don't know.
Yeah.
Projections change. It's a moving target.
Yeah.
So you got to do what you have to do with the information you have and make the best decision you can for the biggest purchase of your life. And, and if the numbers work, they work. But yes, the market it's interesting.
It is, but it's kind of funny you say that. It almost sounds like you should just have a conversation and see what someone wants to do.
Wait, what?
Yeah, instead of dumping somebody into
Yes.
this bucket or that bucket. How groundbreaking. But you
Right.
know what? It's not happening a lot of times. And that's where folks like Mark, like Laura, y'all have an opportunity to stand out. And Mark, let's just look at this. Before we start talking about the NAR settlement, let's just talk about just general real estate, okay?
Yeah.
And this question is really going to be more directed towards, the general public. You know, this may seem elementary, but what should somebody look for when they're picking out a realtor?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my biggest thing is you want to work with someone that has experience in your local market, right? Because there are nuances to the local market that, as we've seen with some of the iBuyer programs that have come out and failed, the nuances of the market are something that an algorithm just can't learn. So you really need a professional on the ground that understands those nuances, that understands pricing, and that's skilled enough to have the conversations with the other agent, seller, or buyer that they're working with so that they can successfully navigate that for you.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great answer. That's perfect. I love that. No, that's
Cool.
good.
We're done.
Yeah, all right. Man, nice having you. We'll see you later.
I would like to end on a good note.
Well, Mark, I think Laura's going to echo a lot of that because, what someone should look for in a mortgage consultant, right? Loan officer, whatever you want to call it. It's the same type of thing. They've got to have experience. But Laura, what are you seeing as, hey, this is what I most commonly see people picking to work with me? What's what are those key reasons usually?
I honestly great timing on this because today was that day where I'm saving in two appraisal deals from out of state lenders, another appraisal from just a lender that's somewhere in Georgia, but not in the local market.
Yeah.
Just it's, on and on. People that just don't specialize in what we do. Like Mark and I see people, there's nothing wrong with doing this part time if that's what you want to do, but not necessarily the best representation for somebody. Nothing against people trying to make extra money, but I'm saving a lot of deals and I wish the people would just come. It would save them a lot of money and time, having that kind of heartache where they're past their
Yeah.
contingency and may lose their earned money because of people that just aren't really in the business of what of the fitness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the expertise, the local market and the expertise for sure.
Yeah. So it's I like what you said there because and you're absolutely right. This is not knocking somebody who is a realtor part time. I think that's not the point of this, or somebody who's just hanging up their broker's license someplace and hasn't really gotten back into origination. That's fine. That's what they want to do. But the learning curve in our industries is already so steep.
Right.
It's going to take somebody a lot longer to really get the knowledge and experience that helps out your buyers, sellers, as much as somebody who's doing it full time. And, Mark's been doing it 25 years. I'm sure he can attest to this. The folks that got in it during the 2020, 2021 boom are not the strongest, right? Because they haven't seen those cycles. They haven't,
Right.
they haven't had to earn their bones as much, right?
Right.
Which, it's good and bad. It's an opportunity for them to do it. But, there is something there because, guys, above everything else, this is a sales and business development podcast, right? So I love hearing that information, from you guys. Before we move on, is there anything else that y'all want to touch on that?
I think the biggest thing is this is a skills-based market. We've gone from an opportunity market to a skills-based market. So agents, loan officers, anyone in this industry has to be willing to go hunt for
Mhm.
business and know how to convert, have conversations, and keep deals together, which is something that you didn't really need to know how to do in 2021 and 2022.
Right,
It's
right.
just
Yeah.
a different market. And
Yeah, it's a different market, but if you can make it in this, you'll be good going forward. So
Yeah, that,
there's
that's really well said. I haven't heard that term before, but it is truly a
Mhm.
skills-based market. I love that. I'm going to use that.
That's right.
I
And
didn't need to
also,
come up with it.
Mark,
I'm
it's
just
on the show. You
repeating
can
it.
rip it off. You can rip it off. I'm sure Mark won't.
I'll have a little disclaimer said by Mark Jones.
That's right. That's
16
right.
on
Don't do that, because then I
You'll
have to have a
you'll
disclaimer
put
of
a
all
little
the places
dash
I've
in
heard
his
it.
name. Yeah, I love it. Let me ask y'all this. And this is really, I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, our transactions that we deal with every day involve a lot of different parties. There's not necessarily, while I'm looking at, with the realtor and the originator, the two big ones, right? But there's so many that go into it. Your appraiser, your attorney, your whatever, surveyor, doesn't matter, insurance agent. I am kind of curious if y'all just take a second, think back to who you do business with the most as far as those ancillary groups go. And tell me, how long have y'all done business together, slash, how long have they been doing this? Because I'm willing to bet those are probably fairly long-standing relationships.
Yes, very
Absolutely.
much so. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a level of trust, there's a level of confidence, and that's why it's also, if you're going to make it in this, if you're an originator or a realtor, you've really got to work to earn somebody's trust. And I think that's hard to do.
Yeah, I think when you're in real estate, you're working with a team. And I feel like both loan officers and agents sort of see their role as, it's my job to make sure everyone else does their job and get this
Mhm.
to the finish line.
Yeah, you're the
So
quarterback.
project managing a group of people. So the more you can eliminate risk by having a known quantity, someone
Yes.
that knows their job at a high level, then that just reduces the chances of it going off the rails.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then that's leading into, I'll just lead us into the NAR settlement conversations. I think we were in one of the team meetings. Mark was talking about like the agents that know their value, know their worth, and are worth, the percentage that they're charging. I heard the best analogy, and I think you said it, or maybe Valerie said it, or you both said it, was that like those that are easily lowering their fees, like, oh, I'll just lower my fees. What are they going to do when somebody's negotiating on the sale of your home and you're like, oh, just take the deal? Like you could be losing tens of thousands of dollars because this person is just somebody that's like, just lower my fees. Oh, why don't I just lower your sales price? Well, I'll just pay less. Everybody pay
Yeah.
less.
All of a sudden, you're running a charity instead of a business.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
exactly.
Like, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and this is what Laura's referring to is, when we teach agents to know their value and to present their value proposition, and someone tries to negotiate their commission, we say, just share with them that if I'm willing to, roll over and cut my own commission when it's my money, how effective what do you think I would be if it was your money?
Right.
So I would be really cautious of hiring any agent that will allow you, simply because you asked, to reduce their compensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I got no beef with somebody asking, but at the same
Yeah,
time, what? That's an opportunity for a conversation.
absolutely.
Because a lot of times people, that's got to be it's just like in Laura's world, right?
Yeah.
What's your rate? Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's more that goes
Right.
into it. It's just like compensation.
Exactly.
You're getting X amount of
Right.
expertise by working with me at this price, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's important to remember. It's important to remember.
I always like to ask people what they drive, because generally they don't say, I drive a, 1980s Yugo, right? They drive something that has some value. So, drawing the correlation. Well, it sounds like since you drive that BMW, that you see something of value other than just price,
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
right?
And,
And
and
let
I,
them sit with that a moment.
Yeah.
right. And I had to learn the hard way, sadly, like choosing the cheapest contractor. You never want to use
That's right.
like I have lost so much money in my youth using like
Mhm.
the cheapest contractor. It's the same premise. You just,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, Laura, in a different conversation, you brought up kind of the age old analogy of, are you going to be shopping around for your surgeon for who doesn't, the
right.
cheapest? Of course not.
Seriously.
But it's funny. That's kind of the world we live. People are conditioned to ask those kind of questions at this point. When you've got I'm sure everybody's seen the LASIX commercials, right? Listen, if somebody's shooting a laser into my eyeball, I'm not going for the cheapest person. Okay.
Right.
No, I told Laura this may have been on a different show. I can't remember. I saw a billboard driving to Atlanta for a reduced fee ambulance.
Was like 2 for 1 or something?
Yeah.
Two items.
It was because the standard cut for an attorney in a suit is 40% of the settlement, right? Well, this guy was saying, I'll do it for 25%. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, what's going on?
Right.
But anyway, all right, let's get right into NAR. Now, for those listeners out there that are heavily into our industry, you're probably very familiar with it. However, there remains a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation about it. I see the social media chat groups and everything. There's just a lot of confusion out there. And I don't think there necessarily has to be. I think it comes from a lack of consensus as to what the meaning and impact is of that NAR settlement. Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, just so
Sure.
listeners that may not be totally familiar with what it is, break down what the NAR settlement is, and then let's transition into talking about it and its impact on the public. Okay.
Sure. So at its core, it's about a decoupling of commissions. So it's separating buyer broker and seller broker commissions, because in the past, most places in the country would offer the seller would pay for the buyer broker commission, and they would offer that as a part of what they paid to the seller's broker. And the seller's broker would share that commission. And the argument that was made was that consumers were not able to negotiate that on their own behalf, and they didn't even necessarily want representation. So this settlement was designed to decouple those commissions. So what you pay the buyer's broker is a completely separate conversation from what you pay the seller's broker. And as a seller, you may choose not to provide compensation to a buyer's broker. And that's certainly within everyone's right. I think the thing that most people don't understand is it's always been negotiable.
Right.
It's just, I don't think it was a completely transparent process. So I think there was a lot of misunderstanding about it.
I agree with that, Laura. You and I have said this before. Georgia was a little bit ahead of the curve from a lot of states, in that regard, which is of course a rarity. But Mark, what would you say? If I am getting ready to go out there and start looking for homes, and I'm like, okay, I've heard about this settlement, this thing. Am I going to have to pay thousands of dollars? Do I have to do that? Like, what do I even do? What questions do I ask? Talk a little bit about that. Just from the general public's perspective. Somebody looking to buy a house, counsel for me.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is buyers need to understand that they don't know what they don't know.
The world would be
It's
better
like
off
anything else, right? Like in some states, agents have been literally door openers, and in other states, they're highly skilled professionals. Georgia happens to be one of those states where a lot of what we do as an agent in Georgia, my brother in Connecticut does as an attorney. The realtor opens the door, helps them identify the property, and then the attorney takes it from there. So first of all, understand what realtors do in your state. I think that's the number one thing. And number two, understand what the compensation they're asking for is and what they provide for that compensation, because you do want to know who you're hiring and what you get for it.
Yeah.
And skilled agents are going to be able to say, here are the things that I do. This is why it adds value. This is how much value it adds on average. And this is why I charge what I charge.
I like that piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can quantify something that's only qualitative, that really helps the general public kind of take some of the abstract stuff and really bring it back down to earth. I think that's really important and not easy to do, which is what separates the pros from the amateurs, right? What are some of the most common questions that you get asked right off the bat, as far as, hey, do I have to pay all this? Is this something that the seller pays? How does this work?
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest question they ask is, do I have to hire an agent?
Right.
Or do I have to pay this
George's
fee?
perspective. Yeah.
Right. And and the answer is, you've never had to do that, and you don't have to today.
Yeah.
However, let me explain what agents do for you. And let me share a couple of stories of people that I've seen in the past, because I've been a broker for 22 years. So I've seen a lot of agents have clients who made bad decisions, or work with customers that made bad decisions. So I try to give them some cautionary tales of people who thought they could do this on their own in Georgia and ultimately learned that they would have saved a lot more money had they had professional representation.
Yeah. I kind of wonder and Mark, you actually may know this. I don't know what the percentage of people that list, and this is obviously from the seller side, not the buyer side, but the people that list for sale by owner and then end up converting to working with a realtor. I wonder, I don't guess you happen to know what that percentage looks like, do you?
Yeah, I don't have an
Okay.
actual percentage, but I can tell you that the majority of people use an agent to sell their home, and there's a reason. And there's a small
There you go.
percentage that try for sale by owner, and there always will be. I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
a
People are always
valid
going to try
choice
and
for
do it.
people. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's the problem is when someone hires or works for sale by owner to sell their home, again, they don't know what they don't know. So they may not understand that they've put themselves in legal jeopardy until
Mhm.
and a lawsuit actually happens.
That's right.
I had an
Yeah.
agent for years, for 20 years, I've worked with an agent who used to do things by the seat of her pants. She wasn't the most professional person. And I was constantly telling her, you can't do that. You can get sued for that. And she didn't believe me until she got sued.
Yeah.
And then she was like, oh, this is what you were telling me about. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why you can't do that stuff.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, now I'll take it seriously. And I was like, that's
Yeah,
great. And
it's
I wish
great
you had
now.
taken it seriously before instead of having to learn the hard way.
Yeah, it's like, I could go to LegalZoom for a lot of stuff. I'd rather sit down with an attorney and talk to them because they may know something that needs to be in there instead of a
Right.
generic form, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's more that goes into it, even from a contract perspective.
Right.
It's crazy, but that's the way it goes. Laura, what do you typically tell folks that are getting out there and they're saying, "Hey, look, I'm looking for a realtor. I know I may have to pay for it." What are you counseling
Yeah.
these folks to do?
Well, I often tell stories of, of things I've seen over the years. And Mark is right. You don't know what you don't know. It's almost like trying to tell sometimes, like you have kids trying to tell them something and then they have to learn that
Learn
sometimes.
the hard way.
I can tell you, like, I'll tell a story about, like, if it's a listing, I have clients that sellers are often buyers, right? So sellers like, oh, what if I just list this myself? And I can tell you one of the best stories for using a listing agent. The seller decided to sell on their own. We were at closing. We don't have communication with the seller or the listing agent to the only degree is like, hi, we're doing a loan for the buyer. We don't share appraisal value, nothing with them. We're sitting at closing and the seller really wanted to save money. And she ended up selling 60,000 below value, and found out at closing and literally called her attorney at closing and said, I don't want to close. And the guy's like, sorry,
That's too bad.
bad. So sad,
Mhm.
you tried to save money. And on the flip side of that, I also counsel because, like I'm on the lending side. So the buyers will come and talk to me, my house is sitting. On the other side of that is that there are people that are trying to sell by owner and they're just completely unrealistic with what they're asking. They don't understand the market. They don't understand their house, the square footage. Oh, I have 5 bedrooms, but you're 1,000 square foot house. But they want 700,000. They just don't
5 bedrooms,
understand
a
the
million
market at
square feet.
all.
That's impressive.
Right. It's a
Small
total waste
bedroom.
of
That's
correct.
right.
All the way to talking small bedroom.
Yeah.
We call that
So
cozy in real estate.
That's right.
exactly. There is real value to what a realtor does. They
Mm.
save tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, and also protect you. I had a buyer who thought they could do this on their own. They didn't use a realtor and they went under contract, went
Okay.
past the contingencies. We got title back because title often comes later. This was always also before the 2-week closing, like that, the COVID 2-week closing. And guess what? The owner didn't own the property. The seller
Oh,
didn't even
nice.
own the property because
Enough
that's what
like a little
agents
fraud to go in there.
do. Right. That's what agents do. They make sure the seller actually owns the property. Like there's so many things that you can't even list. We don't have time to list that an agent does to protect you in the state of Georgia. Sure, there's other
Right.
states. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. There's other states, but here, especially and surrounding states, they really just do so much with the contract and the property, the inspections, we can name it on and on, but
Well, I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
that up because Georgia is, frankly, I hate to say it, but we are one of the top 5 states for real estate fraud in the
Yep.
country. So
Yes.
yeah, you're going to be covering your ass big time if you work with professionals. So
Yeah.
for sure.
The bottom line is we do this every day, and we've worked on hundreds and some of us thousands of transactions, whether it was directly or indirectly, like for me through other agents as well. And most home buyers have bought and sold somewhere between 3 and 7 homes in their entire life,
Yeah.
right? So just the sheer infrequency with which they do it means that they've never sold in today's market. They don't have the latest data. They don't understand at a high level how to price property, and it goes on and on. And we do. So I think it's just one of those things that the more you can educate people on
Yes.
potential perils of representing themselves, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even imagine in this market right now, especially being so difficult, not having a buyer's agent to represent you. How are you going to negotiate? Listing
Yeah.
agents aren't going to want to mess with people. I just had somebody that did this. The guy used to be an agent, so he had some experience to that. I understand, but it was still, and the guy was an agent for years, and is now an IRS agent, interestingly enough. But he had such a difficult time. He lost one house after the other house till finally he hired the listing agent of the house he wanted to represent him as the buyer's agent. Like, like he just kept losing houses, and listing agents would call me and say, "This guy has no representation. Who is he?" They were freaked out, especially women in the world. Like, I don't want to meet a strange guy. I don't know. He doesn't have an
Sure.
agent. Who is he? There's all sorts of things around that too, that are just necessary to have somebody representing you.
Yeah, it's kind of like the thing, you said the guy used to be a realtor. That's great. Well, you know what? You work with people that used to be, mortgage originators too. Things change. And,
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah, things have
what it
changed.
was 5 years ago is not the way it is now.
Sometimes 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's for sure. Mark, let's shift a little bit and go more from the agent's perspective of this. If you were talking to a group of realtors that you say, hey, look, these are like the 2 or 3 main things that I want to be sure and communicate out there about NAR frankly, to better serve the community and just to make you solidify your position as a subject matter expert.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being able to explain and articulate your value.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're on a buyer presentation or you're, having to show property to a buyer and you need to get something signed first, those situations, know your value proposition so you can explain, here's why you want to hire someone, here's why you want to hire me.
Yeah.
And here's the value I bring. And like I said, be able to articulate your numbers. This is the average amount of money I save my clients on the front end, just negotiating the purchase price. Then I save them X percent on average or X dollars on average when we go through our due diligence period, but as I negotiate through repairs. And this is the number of multiple offer situations I've won and the percentage of multiple offer situations I've won. So being able to articulate your experience and the value that you bring through that experience is key. So number one, understand that. And number two, come from a place of contribution and education, because we're professionals and it's our job to educate people.
Yep.
To your point earlier, when someone asks you for a discount on your commission, it's not personal.
No.
Don't take it personally.
No, exactly.
Embrace and say, you know what, that's a great question and I'm glad you asked. I don't blame you for asking. I would ask myself. Here's why I can't do that. And explain yourself. Again, if I was to do that for you, I would be really worried about hiring me to represent your
I give
biggest
away my own
asset.
money. Imagine how quickly I'll give away yours.
Yeah, it's
like
Yeah.
silly, right?
you want to hire someone that understands how to negotiate on their own behalf, because
Yeah.
if they're a good advocate for themselves, they're going to be a good advocate for you.
Oh, yeah. Very good. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's almost like the questions that the public should be asked. You can go hand in hand with what the realtor should be doing.
That's
Wouldn't it
crazy.
be great to have a conversation of saying, you got somebody looking to buy, say, hey, can you explain to me, and show me what the real value of working with a realtor is? As a matter of fact, I can, and bring it out there.
Yeah. So glad you asked.
That's right. So glad you asked. Yeah. So that's why I like to get it from both perspectives, because, they should really connect. All right, Mark, we are drawing to a close today. Laura, was there anything else that you wanted to ask Mark?
I wanted to ask Mark, putting me on the spot here, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Come on, Laura,
I
I'm
guess,
ready.
what one of the questions. Well, it's an interesting market, like kind of closing the loop here. We talked about the market being how it is. I'm what do you think is coming for the last kind of quarter of the year? We're seeing a buyer's market, a seller's market, depends on the street. Like what are, like at least locally, like what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, and again, everything's hyper local, so you have to really understand the market you're working in. And in Atlanta, that means in town Atlanta it means the neighborhood you're working in.
Yeah, exactly.
So really understanding the data, because the data doesn't lie, right? And you don't need to look at comps that are 6 months old. You need to look at comps from last month. You need to look at what went under contract last month. How long did they sit on the market? How many homes are available? If you're going to represent a seller and try to price a property, you need to understand how many homes in that price range, in that area, that a buyer would also look at are going under contract every month, so that you can price it appropriately. Because if there's 3 going under contract every month and there's 10 available homes, then you've got over 3 months inventory, and you need to be one of the top 3. And I'd venture to say the top 1 or 2 as we go into the holidays and things slow down. You need to be the top 1 or 2 from a value perspective. So put on your buyer hat, pretend you're flipping through Zillow, and look at each listing. And is my listing better or worse for the money?
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
do have one more question.
All right, that's good.
One
Thanks. She came up with something. All right.
All right.
This is a good question because like I said, I was reading something earlier about opportunities in the market. I am seeing lots of opportunities in the market and a lot of people out there, investors, looking at properties because there are a lot of listings. So what do you think the opportunities are for the buyers that are listening and the agents that are listening?
Yeah, I think right now, especially because we're in an election year, I think we have a once every 4-year opportunity to take advantage of sellers freaking out. The market is typically slow from like end of September through, I don't know, mid-November. And then we're in the holiday season. So it may pick up a little in December, but not a great deal, right? So if a
Right.
listing's sitting through that period, it's going to be on the market probably till February. So as sellers are sitting on a house, if their house hasn't sold in the first week right now, they're nervous. And as a buyer, you can come in and take advantage of that situation and negotiate.
Yeah.
And that's why you want a really skilled agent that understands the market they're in and how to have a conversation with the other agent and help them understand what you're getting from me is the best offer you're going to get. And if your client's willing to sit on the market until February, then that's fine too. No harm, no foul. But here's what my client can bring, and we can close in 3 weeks. So would you like to be closed before the holidays or not?
Yeah.
Great question and great answer. I love that. So, Mark, if listeners want to learn more about you and your firm, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, you can go to kwintown.com. That's kwintown.com. And they can reach me at mark.jones@kw.com or on Instagram at ATLJonesy.
All right. Very good. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This is
Thanks for having me.
great information. And Laura, thank you as always for coming back.
Thank you.
This episode of the Big Skip Energy Podcast is brought to you by Highland Mortgage, where your home journey starts and ends with confidence. Whether you're a first-time buyer looking to refinance or ready to move into your dream home, or simply have questions about the market and want a free consultation, Highland Mortgage is here to guide you every step of the way. With personalized mortgage solutions tailored to fit your unique needs, their team of experts makes sure you're informed, supported, and empowered in every decision. And here's the best part. Highland Mortgage isn't just about numbers and paperwork. It's about making the process simple, stress-free, and even exciting. If you're ready to take that next step, visit highlandmtg.com today and start your journey to home sweet home.